I spent my working life in a John Deere service bay, and the machine that taught me the most was one they would not let me fix. A farmer hauled his tractor in with one fault code and a field ready to cut. The part was cheap, but the invoice on my counter was not, because the only tool that clears that code sits behind a subscription the dealer controls, and Deere will rent a farmer that software for $3,160 a year, and it still would not finish the repair. The farmers walking away from that green paint are not leaving over the tractor. They are leaving over what happens the day it breaks. Every big green tractor and combine built in the last dozen years runs on software, and when one breaks, it throws a code, the same way your pickup does. To read that code all the way down, to clear it, and to tell the machine it is fixed, you need Deere's own diagnostic tool. It is called Customer Service Advisor. And here is the part that made me set down my wrench and start paying attention. Deere does sell a version of that tool to farmers. It sells it to independent shops, too. A one-year license runs $3,160. To renew it the next year is $2,560. That is real money for a piece of software, but a farmer will pay it because the alternative is towing the machine to town every single time something lights up. Except here is what the Federal Trade Commission put in its complaint against Deere in black and white. The version they sell you is held back on purpose. It cannot reprogram the computers that actually run the tractor. It cannot finish a long list of the repairs a dealer can. So you pay thousands of dollars a year for a tool that reads the problem, shrugs, and sends you right back to the dealer to pay a second time. A locked tool for the price of a used pickup that still cannot fix the tractor you already own. That is the cost nobody prints on the window sticker. I put everything I learned about what repairs really cost you into a manual, the Equipment Freedom Manual. It is at getacheron.com, and the link is in the description. That is all. Now think about what that lock really buys Deere, because it is bigger than one repair. When Deere is the only one who can finish the job, Deere sets the price of the job every single time. The commission did not dance around it. It accused Deere of unlawfully acquiring and holding on to monopoly power over the repair of its own equipment. Monopoly is a heavy word for a federal agency to use, and they chose it on purpose, because for the repairs that need the full tool, the dealer network had something close to all of it, 100%, with nowhere else for a farmer to turn. And that split is the whole game. There are two versions of that tool. The limited one a farmer or an independent shop is allowed to buy, and the full one that only an authorized dealer is permitted to hold. The complaint spells it right out. Deere kept the good tool for the dealers and sold everyone else the version with its hands tied. So when your machine needs the kind of repair that only the full tool can finish, and sooner or later it will, there is exactly one door left open to you, and Deere is standing in it holding the price tag. I want to be fair here, so let me say it the way a mechanic would. The tractor is not the problem. Deere still builds a machine that will pull a planter through cold, wet ground at 4 in the morning and never complain. The engineering is real. The problem is the fence they built around fixing it. You can own the iron outright, paid for, free and clear, and still be renting permission to work on it. That is the line I hear from farmers over and over, and they are not wrong to be angry about it. You don't own the operating system, is how one of them put it to me, and that stuck, because it is exactly right. If that fight sounds familiar, it should. It is the same one people had over the phone in their pocket, the one Apple spent years deciding who was allowed to open up. An independent shop that just wanted to swap a cracked screen got locked out of the parts and the software until the pressure finally forced the door partway open. Farmers are living that same fight, except they are living it on a machine that costs as much as a house, in a season where a week of downtime can cost them the whole crop. And it is not only the phone. The car companies fought this same battle and lost a piece of it. Voters in Massachusetts went to the ballot box and told the automakers they had to hand over the diagnostic data to independent mechanics because people were sick of being funneled back to the dealer for every small thing. Farmers are about the last ones still fully locked in. And what makes it sting for the men my age is that the farm dealership used to be the exact opposite of all this. I came up in that world. The parts man knew your father. The service manager would hand you a loaner combine on a handshake at 9 o'clock at night in the middle of harvest, no paperwork, because he knew you and he knew what the weather was about to do. Somewhere along the line, that handshake got traded for a subscription, and the old-timers feel it in their chest. Let me take you behind the counter for a minute, because the invoice is only half of what this costs a man. I remember a farmer who brought a machine in during harvest, and it was not some old wreck, it was a newer one, the kind that still had payments on it. It threw a code I could see plain as day, and I knew in my gut it was a small thing, an hour of work, maybe less if the software had let me in. But it would not let me in. That repair needed the dealer authorization, and the authorized technician was 3 farms behind on a day when every operation in the county was trying to beat the weather. So that man waited. He stood in my shop with his cap in his hands and watched a fixable machine sit dead while his beans got riper and the forecast got worse. I could have had him running before lunch. Instead, he lost days. And I want you to understand what days mean in October. The crop does not wait for a service appointment. The rain does not care whose turn it is in the queue. I will not hang a dollar figure on that afternoon because every field is different and I refuse to claim a number I cannot stand behind. But any farmer watching this already knows in his stomach what it was. The real cost of a locked machine is the acres you could not get to while you stood there waiting for permission. And let me put that downtime in plain terms, because it is the piece that never lands on the sticker and never made it into the lawsuit either. A combine that sits dead for 3 days in the wrong week of October costs a farmer far more than the repair itself. It is grain shattering onto the ground that you will never pick back up. It is the load you haul in late and take a discount on, and the neighbor who finishes his fields while you are still parked in the shop. I cannot hand you one clean number for that because every farm is different and anybody who throws a tidy figure at you is guessing. But a farmer runs that math in his head standing in the doorway, and it almost always comes out bigger than the invoice that made him mad in the first place. So stack the whole thing up the way a farmer does at his kitchen table in the winter. The sticker price is just the front door. Behind it is the financing, at interest rates that are not what they were a few years ago. Behind that is the yearly software subscription, if you want the right to touch your own machine. Behind that is the dealer labor rate, every time you cannot. And behind all of it is the downtime, the quiet tax that never lands on a single invoice, but comes straight out of the harvest. That is the real cost of owning one of these machines, and almost none of it is the number on the window. And this is landing at the worst possible time to be told your equipment is more expensive than you thought. The farm economy is tight right now. Grain prices are low, and the fleet of machines out on American farms is older than it has been in a long time, because operators have been nursing what they have instead of trading up. When a farmer is keeping a tractor for more years, repair stops being a once-in-a-while headache and becomes the whole relationship. A machine he can fix himself keeps earning for him season after season. Lock him out of that repair, and the same machine slowly turns into a trap he cannot climb out of. Once a farmer sees that whole bill clearly, he starts doing what smart operators have always done when a system quits working for them. He looks for the exit. For a lot of them, the exit is used iron, an older machine with a known history, the kind a good mechanic can actually get into without asking anyone's blessing. For others, it is a different color of paint. Massey Ferguson and the Fendt brand, both sold under AGCO, have built a reputation for being friendlier to the independent wrench, and I hear more farmers saying the quiet part out loud. If you want software, buy Deere. If you want iron you can fix, look somewhere else. I will leave the full market share breakdown for another day, but the direction people are leaning is not a mystery. These men are not being disloyal. They have simply run out of patience with a company that stopped making it easy to stay. And here is the thing about being able to fix your own iron. It compounds. A machine you can work on yourself is a machine you can afford to keep one more season and one more after that, which is exactly what farmers are doing while the money is tight. Every year you hold on to a tractor you can actually repair is a year you did not sign for a new one, and that is real cash kept on your side of the table. A locked machine quietly takes that choice away from you. It is cheap to own right up until the day it is not, and on that day, it decides for you when you are driving to town and what it is going to cost you when you get there. And Deere can see it in their own numbers. This has been a brutal stretch for the entire equipment business, and nobody is arguing otherwise. Deere itself expects its big farm equipment sales across the United States and Canada to fall by something like 15 to 20% this year, and the company is calling this the bottom of the cycle. Out at the dealerships, roughly 2 out of every 3 farm equipment dealers reported their new equipment revenue going down. Some of that is just the farm economy doing what it does, and a careful farmer postponing a big purchase in a lean year is not Deere's fault. But here is where I stop being polite. A down market is the exact moment to make your machines easier to own, and Deere spent those years doing the opposite. When times are tight and you tighten the screws on the people who buy from you, that is a choice somebody made in an office. So let me be plain about who the villain in this story actually is. It is not the green paint, and it is surely not the man who answers the phone at your local dealership. He is caught in the same machine you are. The people who decided a farmer should have to rent the right to fix his own tractor never once sat in one. They ran the margin, they liked what they saw, and they took it. That is the choice this whole thing is really about, and greed is not too strong a word for it. Now I have to turn around and argue against my own story, because if I only give you the angry half, I am doing the same thing that headline does. Here is the fact that cuts against everything I just told you. This past July, the Federal Trade Commission and 5 states reached a settlement with Deere, and the terms are not small. For the next 10 years, under the eye of federal regulators, Deere has to give farmers and independent shops the same repair tools and the same software it hands its own dealers. The exact lock I have been describing to you all this time, the company has now agreed to open. So I am not going to stand here and tell you nothing will ever change, because on paper it already has. I have to be honest about the size of that. If it holds up, it is the biggest thing to happen to farm repair in my working lifetime. I will give you the caveats too, because a reporter who buries them is selling you something. That settlement still needs a judge to approve it. There was a separate lawsuit, a private one, that Deere agreed to settle for $99 million back in the spring, and the July deal put $1 million toward the state's legal costs on top of it. A promise written on a courthouse motion is not the same as a farmer clearing his own code in his own shed. And I will believe the tools are really open the day an independent mechanic in a country garage tells me they are. But the door is further open tonight than it has been in years, and that is the truth, whether it fits my story or not. So where does all of that leave the farmer trying to decide what to do this season? It leaves him holding the one thing this whole fight was ever really about, which is leverage. A farmer who can fix his own machine, or buy one he is allowed to fix, or walk into that dealership knowing he has somewhere else to go, is a farmer with a stronger hand at the counter. For years, the leverage all sat on one side of it. That is the thing that is finally starting to move. And farmers have more time to use that leverage than they might think, precisely because the fleet is old and nobody is in a rush to buy. When you are not desperate for the new machine, you can afford to wait for the better deal, the cleaner used unit, or the brand that treats you like you actually own the thing. Desperation is what the old system ran on. An operator who has real options and knows he has them is a much harder man to corner at the parts counter. What I would tell you to watch is simple. Watch whether that settlement clears the judge. Then watch harder whether the tools actually turn up in the independent shops, because that is the place a court order either becomes real or quietly does not. Watch what your neighbors are buying, and watch what they are quietly keeping and fixing instead of trading in. That last one will tell you more than any earnings call. I keep going back to that tractor on my lift, the one with the cheap part and the code I was not allowed to clear. I understand that morning better now than I did when I was standing over it with a wrench I was not permitted to use. The farmer who owned it was nobody's fool. He bought the best iron he could, he paid for it, and he did everything right. What failed him came from a long way outside his field, from people who will never smell diesel in the cold, and it turned a 1-hour fix into a bill and a wait. The tractor was only ever the part of the cost you could see. What a machine like that really costs a man shows up in the day it breaks, in who he is allowed to call, and in whether he still owns the wrench or only the right to hold it. That is the number worth watching. And for the first time in a long while, it might finally be moving the farmer's way.